at the Entheos Academy for Optimal Living. My name is John Carey, and today we'll be joined by Steve Chandler for a great class on how to serve and grow rich. Before we get started, just a couple of reminders about this live event. First, we would love to hear from you. You can chat with us and other participants in the area just over to your right. Please ask your questions there, and we'll come back to them during the Q&A portion of the class, which is the last 30 minutes. We'll be doing a lot of Q&A and coaching today. Also, we are live streaming, so please expect some bumps along the way, and if the stream drops, we'll be right back with you. Steve Chandler is one of America's best-selling authors whose dozens of books have been translated into more than 20 languages throughout Europe, China, Japan, and Latin America. His recent titles include Time Warrior and Wealth Warrior, The Personal Prosperity Revolution. Steve suggests that a higher and vastly more effective business dynamic is the service motive. He writes, "A warrior does not please, a warrior serves. Businesses fail because they do not serve." I'm excited about this class because Steve is an integral part of our business philosophy and strategy, and we're honored to have him with us today. Steve, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, John. It's really a privilege for me to be part of this movement that you have online and the classes you're teaching. I'm really glad to be here. I'm just going to jump right in. I'm going to give my 10 best ideas on creating wealth, producing wealth in the world, and I'll tell you where these ideas come from. These ideas come from my own life, and they come from the lives of my clients. So I've been coaching people almost 30 years now, and one of the major things people come to me with is confusion around how to make money, how to create wealth, and how to have a good, successful career and not be lost in all these insecurities and money fears. So what I've done is I've taken what has worked in the real world, what's worked with my clients, especially what's worked with me, and I've boiled them down to 10 ideas. And if people would execute these ideas and use them and internalize them, great changes would happen. Now, how do I know that? Because I've seen it happen with my clients, and these 10 ideas are ideas that changed my life really dramatically over time. So I'm going to jump right in with idea number 1, and that is to eliminate rejection stories. Rejection is something that exists as a concept. It exists as a story, but it doesn't exist in the real world. There isn't rejection in the real world, like, for example, there's water or gravity or trees. Those are all real. Rejection is just a story that we place on some information we got. So I received some information. Let's say the information is, you're not going to work with me. And that information is only information until I add a story. And if I'm going to add a story of personal rejection to that information, then the consequences are dire. All of a sudden, I'm now in a lower mood. I'm not as creative. I'm not as enthusiastic or upbeat. And my rejection story is what took me there, not the actual event, not someone just providing me with information. So one of the things I work on people with, and I had to work on myself with, and by the way, I was the worst case in all this stuff. I talk about that in my book, Wealth Warrior. It's kind of my biography of failure. My failures were colossal in all these areas, especially in creating wealth. And these 10 ideas are the antidotes to what I was doing. So, for example, I would always fear rejection, and I would always hate communication that might end up in rejection. And that was a consequence of my taking things personally in my career and in my workday. Always a bad idea. And when I was able to elevate a bit and come from a higher place consciously, then rejection didn't exist anymore. There is really no such thing as rejection. You can feel rejected, but you can't really be rejected. It's just a story. So let's eliminate those stories. And it's easier to eliminate these stories than it looks. It just takes a little practice. And I don't mean a lot of practice. I mean a little insight, a new level of understanding, and just a little bit of practice. And pretty soon, when someone says they don't want my product or they don't want to work with me, that's no longer rejection. That's simply information, and I move on. And moving on is what I need to do during my day, because there are about 1 billion people who could buy your service or your product. So why stay with this one person nursing my gothic story of tragic rejection? This is a terrible soap opera habit that people get into, and it doesn't help their business. Now let me move on with idea number 2. Notice my visual aids I'm using here. They're very basic. My hand here signals number 2. Now, number 2, this is another idea that will really help you as it helped me. Here's the key thing. You want to replace pleasing with serving, because pleasing is a problem. Pleasing is what I find on people's day planner and in their diary and in their journal about what they did all day when they're not succeeding. They're pleasing instead of serving. So let me give you an example. Pleasing, maybe I have an alcoholic father. I serve him a martini because he asks me for one. I am pleasing him. Now, rewind the film. I have an alcoholic father. I sit down with him. I begin an intervention. I take him to a treatment center. He might not be comfortable with that, but I am now serving him. Now, the same happens throughout your day. If you spend your day trying to please everybody, let's say you're taking calls from family all day, you're answering every email that comes in, somebody knocks on the door, got a minute? Got a minute? And you're saying, yeah, sure, why not? Why? And what you're violating here is the fact that 1 hour of uninterrupted time is worth 3 hours of constant interrupted time. Now, why is time interrupted so much this way? The answer is pleasing. I'm trying to please people. Why do I do that? I've been programmed that way. Notice that when we grow up in this society, we are programmed and habituated and taught to please. Please your grandparents, please your parents. And when we got praised growing up, it was always for us being pleasing. You were so good today. You were good in the grocery store. You're such a good boy. Well, what that means is it was like I was behaving as if I was on Xanax or something. I wasn't making any trouble. And that's what they valued in a child. Just be pleasing. And so all of a sudden, my whole programming is to be pleasing, to be liked, to be approved of. Now, when I go into the adult world and try to create some real success for myself, this is not effective because I'm spending all my time. People ask, hey, can I take you to lunch? Yeah, okay, I guess so. I don't want to say no because maybe that person would be offended. So now I'm out at a 2-hour lunch with this person who I really don't want to be at lunch with. Now I've lost 2 hours out of my day. And this is really the biggest time management issue people have, is pleasing instead of truly serving people. So that's idea number 2. Now, number 3 is called lighten your heart. Lighten your heart. Studies show in the workplace, on the battlefield, in sports, on stage, people who are having fun, the samurai idea of dying before you go into battle, people who are light-hearted perform better. They perform with higher levels of creativity, higher levels of enthusiasm, intuition, imagination, all the great things that move our life forward, that bounce our career forward. Those things happen when we're having a good time. However, on the other hand, when we're taking everything seriously, like money becomes oxygen, and this is survival, I'm trying to survive by doing my business. Then I become very serious and worried, and I go down into a low mood, and I can't create from a low mood. I can't be innovative from a low mood, and things fall apart. So it really sounds counterintuitive. It sounds like, well, you're being frivolous or you're not taking your work seriously enough. No, you don't want to take your work seriously. You want to be sincere, you want to be committed, but then lighten your heart, have it be fun. The great quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings was Fran Tarkenton. And his motto was, if it's not fun, you're not doing it right. And I've changed that a little bit for me. I say, if it's not fun, do it differently. And so as I look through my day, look through my week, the things I have, the tasks, the job, the commitments, if it's not fun to do, I want to start doing it differently. Because I know for a fact that when it becomes fun, I'll be more energetic, more enthusiastic, and I'll be better at what I'm doing. Let's move on. Let's move on to number 4. Number 4, choose transformation over information. See, people have this mistaken idea that the reason they're not succeeding, they don't have the right information. They don't have enough information. They need more information. And so they